I'm with former Cornwall, Ontario Deputy Fire Chief Rob Hickley. Mr. Hickley, you had a tough decision this week come down from the justice that was handling your appeal for funding for your case.
Yes, I was surprised at the ruling, but I respect the judge's ruling and his reasons for ruling that way.
Well, according to what I read of the document, that he didn't exactly say that you were completely in error and there were no grounds or no founding. He just couldn't find law to support your position. So it shows that there's definitely something that's happened that needs investigation. It's just a matter of who pays for it.
Exactly. My application was for funding.
Mm-hmm.
The judge wasn't asked to adjudicate the merits of the case, although he did address the fact that I have raised some serious issues.
Mm-hmm.
So what he decided was, do I get funding? And that's where it ended with that judgment. And his answer was no, for the reasons he outlines.
Now, in the interim, while we were waiting for the judge to make his decision, you had a development regarding your employment with the city itself. You were on short-term disability, I believe?
Short-term sick leave, yes.
So what happened with that?
I simply ran out of short-term sick leave days.
Mm-hmm.
I've been off sick for several months, and that came to an end.
And what options did you have at that point? Because you are now officially retired, correct?
Well, I haven't filed for my pension as yet, because I did apply for long-term disability benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And initially that was declined,
Mm-hmm.
but with the proviso that I hadn't provided them enough medical evidence.
Okay.
So in the interim, this past month or so, I've been to see my doctors again and I compiled that evidence, and it's just recently been sent to the LTD company.
Okay. And there'd be a difference between long-term disability and retirement, because you're close to retirement, right?
Yes, my earliest retirement date would have been May 31st, 2014, so it's some 7 months away.
So essentially, the longer you're on long-term disability, the better your position would be regarding your pension.
No, my pension would remain the same.
Okay.
If, say, I was on long-term disability in between here and that pension date, my pension would stay the same. If, however, I don't get LTD coverage and I have to start drawing my pension now, then yes, there is a penalty.
Now, you released a statement earlier about this, and I gather from the tenor of that statement that you feel you were almost pushed by Mr. Levac in the city. That way, you guys requested to be on executive leave the way Paul Fitzpatrick was.
Yes.
You, I think, suggested some other alternatives. What happened without those transactions and conversations?
I had a meeting with the CAO and the head of HR,
Mm-hmm.
and I put forward these suggestions. Number one, that my short-term sick leave could be extended,
Mm-hmm.
or that I be granted the same administrative leave as other people have been granted.
Which doesn't even exist in the city of Cornwall. That was the first time ever they've had that from Mr. Fitzpatrick.
That's what I understand.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. And we talked about various solutions, but what I was left with was return to work or retire.
Did they offer you any other option?
I believe that's it.
After how many years service for the city of Cornwall?
Almost 27.
Wow. How did you feel at the end of that meeting?
I was obviously disappointed, but I have to tell you that my time with the Cornwall Fire Service was great. It was wonderful. I'm very grateful that I was able to be a firefighter here in Cornwall. I'll always be grateful for that.
And now you found out the verdict here, where all the monies that you've invested legally are at a roadblock. Does this mean that the case is dead?
No, the case is by no means dead at this point. With this release that I've given you today, I've outlined my reasons
Mm-hmm.
for stepping back at this point. Simply that I'm ill. I can't continue on with
Mm-hmm.
this.
Do you mean personally or financially?
Both.
Okay.
Both. We're talking sums of money that I certainly don't have. And on the health side of things, I've been advised to step away from this because it's very hazardous.
Mm-hmm. So if another lawyer came forward pro bono because Ms. Brunning is no longer representing, or her firm is no longer representing, if another lawyer came out pro bono, or if the public put a fund together, you would still have hesitancy into moving forward with that?
As I said earlier, depending on how that would all come together, certainly I'd have a look at it. And if I thought I could make a meaningful contribution within the confines of my health, then yes, I would go for it. On the subject of Faye Brunning, you know Faye, so do I. Wonderful person. She and her firm have given of themselves in a substantial way to proceed with this. Pro bono work to the tune of about $100,000. So you really have to admire the social conscience that she and her firm have.
What do you think the lesson or the word to the city of Cornwall employees are after watching what you've gone through? How do you think they feel? Or do you think they're going to be as brave as you were to step forward with information, or are people that work for the city of Cornwall going to be more afraid to whistleblow?
I have great faith in the employees of the city. Wonderful group of people, truly. And I think that they've looked at my example, and although some of them may hesitate initially, I'm confident that if presented with sufficient evidence or sufficient cause, that yes, they would step forward.
If there was proper whistleblowing protection at the city of Cornwall, do you think you'd ever have ended up on disability or sick leave?
That's hard to say. I know that the stress has exacerbated my illness. Would I have become ill anyway? Maybe, maybe not. You know, it's hard to tell.
But should an employee of a city, when they see malfeasance or wrongdoing by a person in authority, have to endure what you have, what Diane Shea have, I mean, personally, financially, emotionally, physically, the tolls that both of you have paid, and the third whistleblower who hasn't been identified yet, should city employees that are representing the public have to endure what you've gone through?
No, they shouldn't. I don't think, excuse me, I don't think any employees of any organization who have sufficient cause to be a whistleblower, I don't think they should suffer any of the retributions, you will, or the trials and tribulations that come with being a whistleblower. People don't blow the whistle just for the sake of doing it. Obviously something needs to be looked into.
Because right now we know that Diane Shea has suffered a loss of income and a loss of status, and she's still a very young woman.
Yes.
You yourself have suffered immensely, and you're still a fairly young man.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Mr. Fitzpatrick, who's at the root of a lot of these issues, was granted that administrative or executive leave, was given a settlement, and was given his pension. He hasn't been punished in any manner for any of the cases that he personally has had his hand on. And of course, the mayor hasn't suffered anything at all. No sanctions, no nothing. Council has turned a blind eye collectively. There are individual councillors that have stood up and said things, but collectively, council has done nothing.
You'll forgive me if I don't make direct comment about any of those gentlemen or any of those people. And I'll be honest with you. There's a high-priced Toronto lawyer under every rock. So I have to be very circumspect about what I say.
This is true. Do you have any regrets?
None.
None? Would you have whistleblown all over again if you even if you knew where you'd be today?
Yes. Without hesitation.
And do you have any messages to other city employees that might be in your situation?
Stand up. You know, if you see things that you don't think are right, or you see things that need to be looked into, stand up. Speak up. It's the only way you'll ever affect any change. I guess I would say to the citizens of Cornwall that I've carried this ball as far as I can at this time. And I'm hoping that the citizens of Cornwall stand up in sufficient numbers to force our council to do the right thing.
Do you think it's just the citizens, though, and council, or does the province have an onus here? I mean, we've had the Premier of Ontario make all these noises about Mayor Rob Ford in Toronto, who, while making a farce of his personal life, has not really had any direct charges based on his function as mayor, whereas here you have the conflict of interest charges, and the Premier refuses to say anything about this whole situation in Cornwall.
Essentially, the provincial government doesn't have the teeth or the legislation to interfere with the workings of a local and municipal council.
But should it? Should there be some sort of oversight?
In a lot of other jurisdictions, they have recall legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a given number of people who plebiscite by plebiscite or write-in campaigns, what have you, can initiate recall legislation whereby the elected official is forced to stand for an election.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we don't have that here.
No, we don't. There seem to be very, very few protections for any member of the public that gets caught in the meat grinder that you and Diane Shea and others have.
We appear to be the pioneers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll get better. I'm hopeful.
Any final words to the community before we finish the interview, sir?
I'm still just overwhelmed and blown away by the amount of support I get.
Mm-hmm.
Literally hundreds of people have come up to me, shook my hand, patted me on the back. People that I don't know. And I feel very grateful for that. Very grateful. And yeah, that's a wonderful feeling whenever I think of the amount of people who've shown their support. And God bless them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hickley.
You're welcome.